Welcome back to Case Studies with Caleb. We are on our third lab review for the JMK series. So just to recap, we've got a 46-year-old female. We know now that she's not menopausal. Her chief complaints were fatigue, low libido. You can read the rest of them there. Her initial lifestyle interventions, or her initial lifestyle habits, she didn't have a dietary restriction. Now she's on no gluten, no dairy. She was taking 40 milligrams of a proton pump inhibitor for her stomach acid and gastric reflux. She was walking and jogging about 4 to 5 times a week. In order to sleep, she has to take diazepam, and her stress management would consist of inconsistent meditation. Her goals were to improve digestion, improve energy, discontinue her oral contraceptive and the PPI, as well as balance her hormones. So initially, what we did was eliminate gluten and dairy. We added digestive enzymes with meals. We added a liposomal multivitamin, and we stopped the oral contraceptive for a month. In our second lab review, we went over the changes that happened after first intervention, and these were the interventions that we did as a result of her second lab analysis. We added rosuvastatin, bergamot, and omega-3 fatty acids to address her cardiovascular profile. We added BPC 157 and melatonin to address her sphincter tone of her stomach. And then we started vaginal estradiol, testosterone, DHEA, and progesterone for her hormone replacement therapy and birth control. And lastly, we started DIM for metabolism, for estradiol, estrone metabolism. All right, so going on lab review number 3. Let's dive in. Okay. So here we go. From the metabolic panel, everything is looking pretty good. Let's see, we got everything looks pretty good there. Let's see if we can get my iPad to cooperate here. All right, so we get our first improvements in our lipids. So beforehand, we had cholesterol in the total of 300s. LDL was up closer to 200, and the triglycerides were in the high hundreds. All of those have improved pretty well, and we don't know if it's because of the statin, the bergamot, the fish oil, or the combination of the 3. It's best to say it's probably a combination of the 3, but we won't know for sure. Okay, CBC is looking good, MCV, color. Total red blood cell count at 4.22 is a little bit on the low side, but it's nothing we're worried about right now. We'll keep an eye on it. Ferritin, iron stores, uric acid, thyroid profile looks pretty dang nice. The GGT is elevated. She didn't increase alcohol or fructose intake by any means, so this was kind of a surprise here. It's the first time it's been elevated, so we're going to watch it and see if it's if it's high again next time. But for now, it's an anomaly. Okay. So from the VagiTab dosing, we have a nice 281 picograms per ml estradiol there, which is perfect. We can see that FSH and LH are above 0, right? So they're not suppressed, but they're in that pre-ovulatory or post-ovulatory range. Insulin is fine at 7, A1C 5.5. Progesterone is on the higher end at 8.6, even though she's only on, a low dose considerably vaginally. DHEA is perfect, 216. I'm okay with that number. Homocysteine dropped from 13 to 7, so that's probably reflective of that liposomal ultravitamin in the first place. She's genetically high lipoprotein a. C-peptide looks good for an insulin of 7. And her testosterone is 44 total with a free of 4.7 picograms per ml. So that's actually at the 1% range finally. And her sex hormone binding globulin over the course of the last 6 months has dropped from 170 to 70. Now, given at this point in time, she hasn't lost the weight that she would have thought she would have by starting these kinds of interventions. But I told her it's a long game that we're playing. We're going to end up adding more testosterone to the mix just to see if we can get a little bit extra skeletal muscle out of it so she can raise her basal metabolic rate. Vitamin D at 43 I'm perfectly okay with, and estrone is at 60 with an estradiol of 230, right? 280. Yeah, so she's way past the 1 to 2 ratio that I want to be comfortable with hormone replacement metabolism. DHT, for this picograms per ml, I like to do everything in nanograms per deciliter. You just take the decimal one over. So it's 10.8, which is fine. And she's not complaining of any hair loss or acne, so her 5-alpha reductase activity is well within normal limits. CRP went down from 8 in the first lab result to 1.6, so she's lost quite a bit of that general inflammatory process that was happening, whether that was because we took out the gluten and dairy or added on the fish oil and rosuvastatin and bergamot. We don't know, but we do know from a biomarker perspective she's less inflamed, and at the end of the day that is what matters. So going back to her plan of action, she's feeling great. Most of her complaints are resolved. If we go back to the top here, dietary restrictions, we've got restrictions now. Oh, the taper worked perfectly. So the BPC and melatonin, she's not taking the PPI anymore. She has no acid reflux with any of her foods. Interestingly enough, the only things that give her acid reflux now is the fish oil and the bergamot and the DIM. So we had to play with that a little bit. We still have to work on sleep. One of our goals is still to get rid of temazepam, so we're going to try and see if we can use phenobut instead. But the fatigue is resolved, the libido is resolved, no issues with PMS, and her digestive problems are all but gone. So the last two that we have to deal with right now are weight gain and insomnia. So for her, the tertiary plan is going to be amlexinox and TTA, which should get some of her metabolic rate going a little bit higher, along with the increase in testosterone, as well as phenobut to try and tackle some of that nighttime anxiety for sleep. So that's all for this third round. At the same time, we're continuing everything else. She's going to do BPC every quarter for the next year, and we discontinued bergamot in favor of rosuvastatin. We're going to stay on the omega-3s, and we're going to try and switch to a liposomal DIM to see if she still has the acid reflux from that. So I know this one was kind of quick and to the point, but I hope you guys learned something from it, enjoyed the conversation. And again, if you have any questions or comments, inputs, insights, I'm all ears. So until next time, thanks for tuning in.